Taking a Walk. Well, this is a treat. Welcome to Taking a Walk, Dan Mason.
Glad to be here, Buzz. Long time no see, but I'm always been a fan.
The same here, Dan. So you are not going to be able to escape our first opening question, which is actually, you'll appreciate this. It's turned out to be my benchmark for the Taking a Walk podcast, where I open it and I ask guests the question, if you could take a walk with somebody living or dead, who would you take a walk with, and maybe where would you take that walk with them?
When I saw that on the sheet here, I looked at that and I kind of had to smile and, I had to do some thinking. But at the end of the thought process, I think I would like to walk with Gordon McClendon. And some of the audience may not know who Gordon McClendon is. I mean, time has passed by, but in my estimation, he was like the godfather of personality radio, not necessarily top 40 radio, because there's a lot of people that would claim that fame, but how to get personalities on the radio and little twists and turns with creating jingles, contests, promotion, traffic vehicles, you name it. And I don't care where I walk. I'll go anywhere as far as that goes. But I would like to talk to him about how he created and what his thought processes were about personality radio. Not top 40, because, there's a lot of people that can claim that. But I would really be interested in his philosophy on what he thought about contests, because nobody was doing that. I remember at WAKY when McClendon owned that station back in the 60s, they came out with color radio. I mean, who would have ever thought that? And obviously it was in contrast to color TV. You wanted to make it more bright, more fun. But that's who I would go with. And I don't care where I go. I'll walk on a bed of nails. I don't care.
Would you reflect on the current state of things?
Yeah, I probably would, because I'm disappointed, like many of us in the business, that that personalities have been drained from the radio, and another generation either hasn't been taught or hasn't been picked up on about what went into that. But I even as a kid, we can get into this a little bit later, but I listened to Wacky in Louisville. That was my station, and I remember at 14 years old, Johnny Randolph, who was the program director, was taking me to the drugstore for orange juice because I was just into everything they did. And my image of them was disc jockeys smoking cigarettes and wearing the purple velvet jacket and, having 15 girls around. But, and it's funny that I stood in front of that window at WKLO, and that was where I eventually ended up. But just, begging, what if somebody come let me in? It's 32 degrees and snowing out here. Of course, nobody let me in. But even with Randolph, what I would do, Buzz, I would write letters and critique the radio station. And I would tell him, the afternoon guy should go to all nights. The all night person needs to do morning drive and blah, 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 blah. And can you imagine if he ever told those poor guys that this dumb 14-year-old kid was dictating the lineup of the radio station? But only because I love the business. I've known ever since I was 12 years old what I wanted to do, somehow be in radio. And I'm still going on the radio. Anybody let me on, so I do it all the time.
Well, we're going to talk about that, and we got to talk about the book also, Fearless, The Life and Times of a Media Maverick. So we're going to get into that, obviously, the context of it. But before your love of radio, you had to have a connection, certainly, with music before that, I'm thinking. Is that true?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I was a top 40 junkie. I bought my first record was I Get Around by the Beach Boys. But yeah, I mean, I loved hits, play the hits. And I didn't want to hear anything past the top 40. Don't give me 45 or 50. I don't want to hear that. And so it's really funny when I would interview program directors, I would say, let me ask you, what's your record collection like? And the people who would say, oh, I've got 2,000 albums. I'd say, next, I'm not going to hire you. No way. I look for the person who said, well, I really don't have very many. I mean, you're hired.
I love that. Sneaky question, but very indicative of someone Because I'm sure you ran across program directors who would program a radio station like it was their record collection that
Right,
they had to
right,
play, right? That
right.
was always a dead spot, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Deep tracks and deeper and deeper and deeper tracks
Equals no ratings.
equals those ratings. That's
Yeah,
right.
yeah. How about the first concert you ever went to?
Oh boy. First concert, I was supposed to go to the Beatles concert at Crosley Field in Cincinnati, but it got rained out. We couldn't, which that trip I won on Wacky or WKLO, one of the two. But I think I went to maybe one of the Toys for Tots concerts that WKLO had early in the 70s, maybe. Or yeah, maybe late 60s, early 70s, something like that. Where they would like, the admission price, which I stole that concept for both Washington and Atlanta when I was there. But you for the price of a toy, they let you in. So
And then you
and it's packed with artists, five, six, seven artists on the agenda.
so was that the first bit of your not only love for radio, but also love for giving back to communities in terms of charities and doing that work? I mean, was that
We
a
didn't.
first taste of it for
No,
you?
I didn't. That would be overthinking it for me at my age back then. No, I was there to have fun and listen to music and have fun with everybody else. Unfortunately, I really wasn't geared to that till a little bit later on in my life.
But it's still stuck in your head,
Oh yeah,
obviously.
Toys for Tots free concert. I
Yeah,
did this promotion at Z93 in Atlanta, and I also did it at WPGC. The exact promotion.
yeah.
Ripped it off from Johnny Randolph and those guys.
So let's trace from the beginning as being 14. So what was the first official job where you were collecting a radio paycheck?
Well, I should insert that at 15, I got a hold of a I got a hold of a book that had all the radio stations in Kentucky. And I probably sent 50 letters at 15 years old, handwritten letters saying, I can help your radio station, whatever a 15-year-old kid would say. And I got an answer from all those 50. One person answered me. It was a lady at a station in Manchester, Kentucky. And Manchester, Kentucky was about 100 miles from Louisville. I had no driver's license. I had no way to get there. But I was just so excited that the person answered me. I mean, it was like, wow, I can do this. So, little by little, the first job I probably had was maybe, I think, a WXVW in Jeffersonville, Indiana, or WEKY in Richmond, Kentucky. So they all kind of run together. But the first really cool job I had was WVOK in Lexington. And that was a heck of a media market radio station. Fabulous station.
What made it so special?
They had, first of all, they had a receptionist on Saturday. Can you believe that?
Wow.
I knew I was in high cotton at that point.
By the way,
But
in an era now, which there's no receptionists
no,
most of the
no,
time.
no, no. Mm-mm. They had traffic condition reports. They had newsmobiles. When we did the elections, Bill Stakelin was the general manager at that time, and Bill would take all of us disc jockeys out to the Red Lion and eat pizza after the election night was over. I mean, who does that now? I mean, maybe they do, but I don't know about it. I wish I did know about it. But he'd take all the guys out for pizza and Coke or beer or whatever, we were drinking. And it was, it was just, and everybody contributed. And we all did our remotes from the county fair, Fayette County Fair. And it was just a fabulous radio station. And they made a lot of money in their day. It was sold to Cumulus later for a lot of money too. So they made it.
What did you learn from like Bill Stakelin while you were, working for him?
Well, for Saquon, it would probably be trying to go to bed earlier than what Bill did. But having said that, though,
He loved to have fun.
He's a carnival guy, man. He is a carnival guy, and the staff always loved him. But he was amongst the people. Bill was never in a ivory tower. He was walking the walk all the time, and
Mhm.
and I really admired him. So a good man.
Yeah. So then what was next after that in terms of job?
Well, I probably sent out about 50 tapes all over the country looking for a job after I got out of school. And I went out of college at Eastern Kentucky. And KIRL in St. Charles, Missouri hired me, which was part of the St. Louis Metro. And, it was okay. I mean, they gave me an opportunity. So I can't say anything bad. So then about 6 weeks later, Chris Bailey, he's passed now, but he was putting on KBQ in Kansas City. And Steve Rivers and I were the original staff at that station, top 40 station in Kansas City. There's, the callers are still there. I think they're country. But went from there back to Louisville because I got homesick and wanted to be back in time for University of Kentucky football games. And I ended up back at WKLO, stayed there for about 9 months and went to Z93 in Atlanta. And then I think things took off from there.
And you went to Z93 in what role?
Just as the night jock, 6 to 9 at night.
Yep.
Then eventually I became music director, and then I became programmer.
So that your first PD job was Z93.
Correct. Yep.
And how fascinating that over time, then that would be one of the many stations that you would have oversight over when you ran the Cook Inlet property.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it gave me an inside track because I knew so much about the market and I knew so much about the radio station that I could formulate my own ideas and kind of guide it to where I wanted it to go. But we had some really good PDs there. There's a guy, Chris O'Kelly, who was there. I don't know if you remember Chris. And John Young was there. John Young's was famous in Nashville, and he moved to Atlanta, and he had a great career at C93. So and Bob Case came in later on after that. Bob came from Seattle. So we had some really good program directors there.
And when you first went to Z93, was Cook Inlet the owners?
Well, no, First Media was.
First Media.
That was First Media. And they were our sister stations were ZLX in Boston, Cube in Seattle, US 99 Chicago, WPGC Washington. And we had a station in Provo, Utah, and KFMK in Houston, Texas. So, they built a really good, solid company.
But you no doubt were focused ultimately on being a program director from the 14-year-old that was sending suggestions to that point. So you were focused that you were not just going to work on the air.
No, I didn't think I was good enough. I didn't, and this is the only business I can do. I'm a dismal failure at everything else I do, but radio and to get ratings, I can get ratings. And I knew what buttons to push with audiences to get ratings. And I did realize early on by the time I got to WPGC, there are a lot of good disc jockeys around. And I went there as program director, and I got off the air. And then probably about maybe a year after that, KTSA in San Antonio, which was a KTFM also, we were looking for a programming oriented general manager. And at First Media, I had just kind of tapped, or Cook Inlet. Yeah, it was First Media. I tapped. And I resigned and I went to KTSA, and I was only 27. So now it's a whole different ballgame. I was starting all over from the very bottom of the pile. When you start, they don't care if you were a hot shot at PGC in Washington. You tell some business manager at KTSA about that, and they'll say, I don't care. They didn't care.
Right.
No, they don't care.
But you knew to add the skill set to understand, what went into sales and what the whole picture of being, the person coveting the FCC license and doing what was right for the community. I mean, you knew for your next move, you needed to be more well-rounded, basically.
I would always get into a job and not physically advertise it, but I would mentally think about what my next job was going to be to try to prepare myself for that. And I think after KTSA, I went back to First Media at KFMK as general manager. We had a great radio station back then. And then Cook Inlet took over, and I became the president of Cook Inlet. And now I'm getting in front of bankers and doing bank meetings. So, I remember specifically one time the Whitney family was one of our partners at Cook Inlet, the Whitney family from New York. And a gentleman there who ran the investment for the Whitney family, we had a bank meeting, and it was in Dallas, I think. And I was doing this presentation, and I said, we had a great year this year, but, first quarter is not going to really be good. I was trying to be honest and forthright. And the gentleman pulled me inside. He goes, Dan, listen, let me give you a hint. There's no market for bad news. Yeah. So I said, yes, sir. I got it. So you learn those things along the way about how to present things and do things. And fortunately for me, I was such a young age, that I had plenty of time where I wasn't in my 50s, so I was in my 30s. So it worked out okay.
But that's a pointed lesson that he gave to you with those words, huh?
Well, yeah, I only said 10 words. And look, I'm still repeating them all these years later.
I know how powerful. Yeah.
Yeah.
So your time at Cook Inlet certainly allowed you further to understand the investment side that was going on and understanding certainly the full picture of how to hire the right people. Because one of the things present company excluded, you knew how to hire the best people and the right people.
I always tried to hire people who were far better than me at certain areas. Nobody can be great at everything, but I wanted the best disc jockeys that money could buy. I wanted the best music directors that I could get my hands on. And I would always still be involved, but I tried to let people do their jobs. I think if you did a background check on me with former people that worked for me, they would say that, yeah, he'll give you the rope to whatever you need to do. I think they
Well,
was
I could hold my hand up and say
Yeah,
that.
yeah. I don't think I ever micromanaged you or any other program director, but sometimes if it doesn't work out and the ratings aren't there, they're gone.
Yeah,
You got to make a change.
you got to
I was
ask questions.
right. I was never afraid to do that. We used to, when Chris Albero and I at CBS, we used to do a state of the station call with the general manager and a program director. And if the station was lagging in ratings, what's your plan? If that plan didn't work, what's your next plan? I kind of learned that from Mel Karmazin, I think. Mel would always say, you better have a plan. And we would come up with a plan, and then it wouldn't work. And he goes, okay, now what's the plan? But you didn't just not have a plan. Everybody had to have a plan to success. So I learned that. I'll give Mel credit for that one.
Well, we'll talk. I have a Mel story I remember, but so Cook Inlet ultimately sold to Infinity Broadcasting. And was that something, as that took shape, that was a long process for that to happen? I remember there
Yeah.
was like a hold up period because of Howard Stern. I remember that stations had to get, the FCC had to bless it and all of that.
Well, that didn't come till way later on the Infinity CBS merger, but the Cook Inlet began selling off radio stations. And I knew that, and I had a contract with the Cook Inlet, but I went to him. I said, you know what, you guys, I mean, I can see what's going on, and that's fine. I mean, you take your money and go. You've been in this investment 5 years now. It's worked out well, and it's okay. So I had to pay an exit fee to them, not a lot, but a donation type thing to the Native American Council or something. But then I got a call from a headhunter at Westinghouse to go to Group W. And I had a couple of really good meetings there, and I left Cook Inlet to go to Group W as president.
And then it would come around where Infinity and Group W would end up forming together. And
Not yet, not yet. What happened first was Westinghouse merged with CBS, and I took Nancy Woodman's place. Nancy was president of CBS Radio, lovely lady and she was getting ready to retire, but she really helped me a lot, guided me, and showed me where the bodies were buried and who was going to make it and who wasn't going to make it. Very helpful. She's in the book. I say that in the book. But then after that, we then came along Infinity with CBS, and that was the merger that, the FCC argued back and forth that they wanted their $1.7 million in fines from Infinity before they would bless it. So, and that's where that came.
and that was in well, let's see, 92, 93, right?
I think it was more like 96. Yeah.
Okay. When you look at the time, the way the whole landscape of radio was shifting with deregulation and just the way, companies were becoming larger, did any of that in your mind, were you fearful of any of that at that point?
Not at the time, because I didn't know what I didn't know. I mean, it was always presented that you got to grow, you got to get big, you got to get bigger and bigger and bigger. Not sure if that might be true for business acquisitions, but I'm not sure it's true for radio listening within a community.
But yet the powerful group of stations that you would ultimately be in charge of were dominant in every marketplace pretty much. There were not many clunker stations, and they owned a large share of the revenue, and they were fixtures in their community. Do you sometimes reflect on that and that part of your career and sort of think now where things are and how, you know, stations in a lot of markets, not those stations, but stations in a lot of markets don't mean what they used to mean?
Well, yeah, I think as an industry, we've probably given up on brands. We put so much emphasis on brands, and now you got, I won't say the company, but I talked to a person the other day that had, in a major market, they had 17 salespeople. That's it. They were doing 8 radio stations. They had, they had everything. So how can 17 people cover all that? All that inventory? I don't think you can. And I think if I were starting all over again, I would probably and national sales aren't really a factor anymore. They're not like they used to be. At one point at CBS, maybe we had 25% of our revenue was national sales, and that's dwindled down. It has to have dwindled down to not very big. I did see a sale that went through in Tulsa. I was really intrigued by this. I need to do more research on it. But Cox had been in Tulsa ever since I've been in radio. They've owned that cluster there for as long as I can remember. And they sold it to a local doctor that I believe he was an eye doctor. But the eye doctor kind of grew up with the station, advertised on the station, and was in love with the station. He didn't care about national business. He cared about local brands because that's what built his business, the local brands. So he bought it, and I think they put in a longtime Cox programmer who had really good business skills, and away they went. And I can't wait to dive in and see how they're doing. I mean, it's going to take me a little due diligence, but I think that you don't have to own Oklahoma City. You don't have to own Tulsa. Just own Tulsa. Just work on your own general market. There's money to be made there, but we'll see where the business goes. But I think it trends away from national business and more towards local. I mean, Jeff Warshaw is doing that with Connoisseur. He's really hyper local now, and I think he's right.
And I think there's a new breed of owners that are just like you said with the Tulsa example, and the other example I think we can use is the owner of WABC as well. That you're going to see people who have other businesses who believe radio can support that business. Maybe it's a little bit of a toy for them because they're billionaires or they don't need it financially, but they're going to use it to support and grow their existing core business. I think you're going to see, owners of sports teams maybe go down that road, and others in business and communities. I think that's the next generation of a lot of ownership, in my opinion. I don't know what you think.
I think that anybody who is passionate about radio stations within a city would do that, would go there. Like you take John Catsimatidis at WABC, and he's a New Yorker. He loves New York. And look what a job they've done. That station had a .6, I believe. And I looked the other day and they're like a 4.1 or something. But I listen to them almost every morning. I bet I listen to them 3 times a week, a morning show, to listen to Sid. But I heard John on there this morning. He's on his own radio station, just having fun. Well, I don't know if he's having fun, but he was talking a lot and going over what was going on in the city and talking about the election and everything. And that's what radio does. That's what they do. That's really refreshing. I got to be honest, like in my car now, Buzz, I don't even listen to music anymore. I listen to sports and talk, and that's about it. I mean, if I want to listen to music, I'll go 5 other different places. And what I don't want to hear is 18 minutes of commercials. I mean, as an industry, we've shot ourselves like that. I remember when we Michael O'Shea put Cube on the air in Seattle, it was 6 minutes, and you didn't go for 6 minutes. That's the way a lot of stations were back then. It was always like maybe a 10 to 12 minute out of music time. And then we say, okay, 12 minutes plus 3 promos plus blah, blah, blah. No, you got 12 minutes to be out of music. You'd be in music 48 minutes. That's what you got to do. If you want to run 3 promos, then you're going to have to play 9 units of commercials, 60s. So anyway, that's my theory.
I don't know if you know Rashad Tabakawala. Do you know him? He used to work for Publicis, and he's kind of like a business guru strategist now. And he refers to these as turds in the punch bowl. So I think there's two turds in the punch bowl that are going on here. One, you mentioned earlier, the fact that talent has become not as important and not as vital for radio. And then the other turd in the punch bowl is the commercial load, which is really a frustrating part of it because no one can quite figure out really what to do about it. And I'm not sure they're going to.
I think you hit it right on the head, or he hit it right on the head. Because that is, I mean, we could pontificate and debate all day long, but it's going to come down to those two issues: no personality and too many commercials. Simple.
So tell me what motivated you to write Fearless, the Life and Times of a Media Maverick.
Well, you could debate the media maverick part. That wasn't really my idea to put that word in there, but nevertheless, I think it talks about just shifting from transition to transition, how you go from an overnight disc jockey to a program director to a general manager to a CEO to what else did I do? A chairman of profit and nonprofit companies to play-by-play basketball on a national network when you never broadcast a game on TV in your life, and just typical going to acting. I was in 2 episodes of House of Cards, but it just all the garbage that I've been through. That it's just a lot of funny stories, and you can't write a book without giving some dark side. And I have had some dark side in my life that I did put in the book that is not very pretty to look at. So if you're being honest, you have to do that. But it talks a lot about leadership versus non-leadership. Talks a lot about crazy promotions that I've done over the years. Like one was back in San Antonio when Doug Moe got fined. I think he got fined $10,000 by the NBA for something crazy that he did. We 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 raised dough for Mo, and we collected all these pennies. We got $10,000 worth of pennies. Tried to take them to the NBA, and of course they ignored us. But stuff like that. I mean, who fries an egg on a sidewalk anymore when it's 100 degrees outside? Remember that?
Yes.
Safers did that in their sleep all the time.
Yeah.
I remember a time when the song "Short People" by Randy Newman came out. We had a short people's party at the Marriott downtown DC. You couldn't you we had little pigs in a blanket. We had 6-ounce beers, and we had the statue at Six Flags or wherever. It says you can't get into this ride if you're shorter than this. And we had that. We took that. We got one of those cardboard cutouts from the amusement park and did that at the door. I mean, I don't think you could get by with that now. That's very.
No.
But
No.
but constantly we're on television. We radio, and that was our big dream. Every radio station's goal was to somehow get on the TV news.
Yeah.
And we were always in the news, and whether it was Boston or Phoenix. And I remember one time at KLSX in Phoenix, which now is the #1 radio station. We put that station on the air as COPA back in top 40 days. And Steve Rivers, the program director, went through a couple. I think Reed Riekert was the program director, maybe. I hope I'm saying this right, Reed. But April Fool's Day, they did an Indian uprising. And all the Indians were coming out of the mountains in Scottsdale and took over the radio station. And they did such a great production job that it sounded real. And the Scottsdale police emptied their entire stations of every piece of arsenal they could find to come down there and surround the station, which we got in trouble for as a hoax.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Wow.
But, who does that these days?
Yeah. But the spirit of those times exactly is what, it was fearless. And people, of course, I'm sure checked nudge, nudge, wink, wink with the lawyers in the company to be
Actually,
sure.
they didn't.
I
They
know.
didn't.
I
And when
know.
we answered the FCC, we said we have no idea. We had no idea, because if we knew it going in, we would be in a lot more trouble than we were.
Right.
But we honestly didn't know, and we didn't know. So
But the key also back to getting on TV was you needed to get the call letters on too, because they could always do, a local radio station did this Doug Moth, but you needed to get the call letters on.
yeah, of course.
Yeah. What was your take when electronic measurement came into the business from, the paper diary?
I told, I said this in the book that I think I made a huge mistake backing PPM when I did. And Randy Kabrick, God bless him, he would always be on my case about this because I was a proponent and Randy was on the other side of this. And it got so bad, CBS ended up blocking him from our email systems. But but he was right. And Roy Shapiro told me, the late Roy Shapiro, who was at KYW years and years, and he was running research for us at the time. He said, Dan, take that money and put it back into the diary systems and get yourself more diaries out there. You're going to have a better measurement system. But no, I was so naive to think that a little meter that you would put on your belt was going to pick up every piece of audio flawlessly that it came in contact with. And obviously, Voltaire came along and proved that wasn't the case. And now look, I think last I read, Nielsen was going to an electronic e-diary, email diary. They could have done that in 2006 rather than what we've been through with portable people meters. But I don't even know, do they even measure them like that anymore? That can a 6-year-old's going to walk around with a meter? Or how about a 70-year-old going to walk around with a meter? Or a 45-year-old businessman is going to go to his job with a meter on? I don't believe that.
Yeah, and I think the reality of the situation is, look, sales is so tied to ratings, obviously, but I believe you were someone who would say, look, ratings go up, ratings go down. Back to what you were saying about brands, your brand needs to sustain this, and you still need to hit budget, right?
Yeah, and I think that the whole industry became obsessed with minute to minute tune out, through the meter. And there was and I did it just like everybody else, but I'm not sure that that was a really good long-term strategy because we sacrificed maybe brand issues. We sacrificed telling DJs to shut up. And, if we ever, God don't forbid if we told Pierre Robert to shut up, I hope we never did, but maybe we did. I don't know. I don't remember. But, it just doesn't flow right with what brands are trying to do.
Did you enjoy going back through your career and writing the book?
Yes. The parts that were hardest were the dark side parts. That was the hardest. But yeah, I did because I wanted to have some kind of written account out there. I'm sure Jeff Schmullian did the same thing when he wrote that. I don't know if it'll sell 100 copies. It doesn't matter. It's just everything is out there on paper. That's what I wanted. So they get it will be about a couple of 100 pages, and it's got some funny stories about Stern, Mel, Moonves, all true. Different groups I've had to work with, rock groups. It's all there. It'll be you could read it in 2 nights. It's not going to be a War and Peace novel. It's going to be quick.
The Mel line that I referenced earlier, I remember he had asked for me to listen to a particular radio station, and because it was suffering in the ratings, and his line was, "You haven't fixed the radio station yet. They were able to fix the Hubble telescope in a matter of days."
There's a story out there. I think it's true. I wasn't at the company then with him, but he had a budget meeting and he hired some guy that climbed Mount Everest. And the guy gets up on stage, and of course, all the sales managers are there and GMs are there. And the guy gets up on stage and talking about what he went through, the grime and the blood and guts of what it took to get up that mountain. And Mel comes back on and says, "All I'm asking you to do is make your damn budget." That's pretty good. That's pretty funny.
It cuts right to the core, no doubt.
It seems pretty easy, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah. Now, there's another facet I know that you've been involved with. Are you still involved on the side of sports betting in terms of, the business of that?
I bought into VSIN, VSIN. I bought about 10% of the company and became chairman of the company in 2019. And we sold it to DraftKings in 2021. So after that, the only other company I've invested in on the sports betting side was a company called Juicereel. It's Juicereel. It's like a marketplace for people who want to buy and sell their bets is what it's turned into. Like you see on Sunday morning, you get hear the people on the radio saying, $25, let me give you my best bets. There's no accountability there. You don't know if they're winning or losing or anything. They just get on there and talk and tell you anything you want to hear. But with Juice Reel, you can actually track the performance of people in the marketplace. And then you can decide if you want to pay them or not, because they're paid. It's not a subscription. It's free. It's a free app. So it's fun to check out and play with it. I don't know if you bet on sports, but if you do, you really enjoy it.
I have, but then it went south, so I stopped. But
Don't feel bad, because the average best bettor, I mean, the best bettors, they only win at a 53% rate.
oh,
I mean,
okay.
it's not like guys are out there, when women and men are out there making 80% picks. No, that's not happening. So don't feel bad. If you're 51, you're ahead of the game.
Yeah. Now there is another part of what your life is about, which involves doing play by play.
Right.
That's obviously going back to your first loves, and talk about what that feels like and what you're doing there.
It was hard. That may have been one of the hardest things that I ever had to overcome, because I would tease the guys, Sean McManus and his people, about, your guys on CBS Sports Network, they're not that good. And back then when they first started, they really weren't that good. They got a lot better now. But Sean would listen to me. He goes, all right. And I was getting ready to retire. So I had plenty of time to do whatever. So Sean says, okay, but I got to have a tape. You got to give me a reel. I said, okay. And I realized I didn't have a reel. I had no reel. So I go to my alma mater, Eastern Kentucky, and beg for a place on Press Row. I got that. Then I talked to my friend Ralph Hacker at University of Kentucky, who was a legend there in play-by-play, and I got their engineers to let me borrow equipment for a night. Then I went to Kyle Macy, who played for the Phoenix Suns, who went to UK, and he was my color guy. And voila, I mean, we had a team. So I did that, and then I still didn't have the video part. So I had to go back to Eastern and get 3 or 4 engineers to help me sync the video and the audio together. And I presented that to Sean and his guys as, here's your reel, which really wasn't a true reel. It was kind of maybe a half reel. So Sean says, okay, all right, we'll give you a shot. So my first game is going to be January of 16. Yeah. And I was at East Carolina. They were playing USF, or South Florida. And now it's coming up on November, and the game's in early January. Most of my stuff always came early in January or early February, because there was a football, basketball override, and all the really good guys were out doing that, so they needed help. So anyway, I realized, I tell my wife, you know what? I have never talked to a producer. I've never been inside of a TV truck. I've never talked to a director. I haven't done anything except give this thing that I put together. And Buzz, I bet I lost 15 pounds just sweating over it. So I started making calls and thinking, I better learn the ropes here. I'm gonna be laughed at. Monetarily, it didn't make any difference, but my bosses were. It was kind of not the joke, but it was talked about that Dan was going to do play-by-play, and they would say, "Oh God, what's that going to be like?" So anyway, I found a friend who knew of a National Hockey League group, crew that could do it. So I had to pay $16,000 for the month of December of 15. And I had like a 5-person crew at 6 o'clock in the morning, because we had to be out of there by 8. They worked with me. And I had a lady as a stand-in. And I had a producer, I had a director, I had camera guys, I had stat guys. So for the month of December, I prepped like hell and made it through the first season. I'm glad I got invited back for the second, but eventually I went on to do 2 years at Coppin State. And then now I'm doing Shenandoah. I'm in my second season at Shenandoah, and it's a Division III school with a lot of really nice facility, nice setup, and they're a lot nicer than the network people. Nicer to me.
Isn't it fun doing something that's a little scary?
Yeah, I think that's part of the book. It's fearless, is people are afraid to try. And, you got to try. I don't care. You got to try. You can't just sit back. You got to give it a shot. If it doesn't work, then that's okay. You gave it a shot. You did your best. You go out and play the game. And you can call your career over when you call it over. Nobody else can call your career over for you. Let's say you get fired at tomorrow from a radio station. That's not the end of your career. Career's over when you say it's over, not somebody else. So look at yourself. You're not working directly in radio, maybe, if you're doing all these other things now. So your career's not over. When was the last time you had a radio job, day to day?
Oh, end of 2019.
Okay, there you go. But when 2019 came and you decided, or they decided, or whoever decided that it wasn't going to be anymore, you didn't call your career over. You said, hell no, it's not over. And look at you now. You're doing all these other things.
Yeah,
Is it the same as what you were doing? Maybe not. But you're in the game still. You're in the game.
Well, that's really powerful advice for those who are being displaced often in the business, because I worry about that generation of people who don't know what the next thing is, and they're calling it over.
Let me add one other thing. I was talking to John St. Augustine. John's in Chicago. He worked at WGN. He worked for the Oprah Network. He told me that he was having lunch with a guy from the Tribune. And the guy told him that if you can write, if you can announce or produce, and you know production skills, like the equipment, on how to use that stuff, you're going to have a job as long as you want. Because now audiobooks are here and all these other different avenues are here. But you need those three basic skills. And you look at the people who have been displaced, they've got those three skills. I know they do. It's just a matter of applying them in new avenues.
Yeah, well said. Well, in closing, I remember fondly when I would go visit you at your office there outside of DC. Once in a while, we would literally go take a walk and grab a cup of coffee around the corner there. And those are always great places to explore ideas and thoughts and conversation. So if I was taking that walk with you, I would be asking you the final question, which would be, what leadership advice would you give right now to those still in positions of leadership in the radio business?
I think two things that jumped out at me when I've read that on your paper. One is never get too high on your highs or never get too low on your lows that are going to happen to you. And there'll be people in your highs that are going to come up and say, Buzz, man, you're the best, man. Nobody's better than you, Buzz. And you just got to mentally say thanks, but don't believe them. Just keep moving. And then when you get through the lows, tell me an NFL coach that hasn't been fired or let go. I mean, that's all over the place. And what do they do? Look at Andy Reid, the guy that got thrown out of Philadelphia. He's Kansas City. He's like an icon. He's a big dude, and it just evolves. I think the second thing you have to keep in mind, what goes up will come down. You don't go up and up and up and up forever. You go up, you go down. You go back up, you go back down. And it puts things in perspective, I believe.
Dan Mason, I'm so grateful for everything over the years and so grateful to have you on and certainly be connected with you on Taking a Walk. And I'm so appreciative of knowing you and having our time.
I feel the same, Buzz. I've always enjoyed talking with you. You're a terrific programmer, and I love program directors.
And I'm lucky I didn't answer that question that I had 2,000 records in my record collection, because I didn't really.
How many did you have?
About 400.
Okay. How many did you actually play?
About 200.
Yeah, there you go. Cut your own playlist down.
Yeah, exactly. Play it at home.
Yeah.
Play that music at home.
Yeah.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you, Buzz.
Thanks a lot. That was so much fun.
That was fun.